From now on, all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. Luke chapter 1, verse 48 through 49. I am going to take some risks in this brief chapter, but I believe it will be worthwhile because for many, this could invite the most important breakthrough of all. Since I am a man, my own perspective on the feminine is surely limited, but this is such a crucial and often ignored theme that I must invite us all to reclaim and honor female wisdom, which is often qualitatively different from male wisdom. I will draw from my own experiences with my mother. I was her favorite. Sisters before and behind me, many women friends and colleagues over the years, and the very nature of some of my God encounters. I hope this perspective can invite you to trust your own experiences with the divine feminine as well. For many, it is an utterly new opening, since they always falsely assumed that God is somehow masculine. Although Jesus was clearly of the masculine gender, the Christ is beyond gender, and so it should be expected that the big tradition would have found feminine ways, consciously or unconsciously, to symbolize the full divine incarnation and to give God a more feminine character, as the Bible itself often does. Whenever I go to Europe, I am always struck by how many churches bear the name of Mary, Jesus' mother. I think I encountered a Notre Dame of something church in every French city I ever visited, and sometimes even 2 or 3 in one small town. Some of these churches are big and ornate. Most are very old, and they usually inspire respect and devotion, even among non-believers. Yet, even as a Catholic, I sometimes wonder who were these Christian people who appear to have honored Mary much more than Jesus. After all, the New Testament speaks very little of Mary. No wonder the Protestant Reformation reacted so strongly against our Orthodox and Catholic preoccupation. Why did the first 1400 years of Christianity in both the Eastern and Western churches fall head over heels in love with this seemingly quite ordinary woman? We gave her names like Theotokos, Mother of God, Queen of Heaven, Notre Dame, La Virgin of this or that, Un Siempre Libre, Frau, Nuestra Señora, Our Mother of our sorrows, Our Lady of Perpetual Help, and Our Lady of just about every village or shrine in Europe. We are clearly dealing with not just a single woman here, but a foundational symbol, or, to borrow the language of Carl Jung, an archetype, an image that constellates a whole host of meanings that cannot be communicated logically. Nothing emerges that broadly and over so much time if it is not grounded somehow in our collective human unconscious. One would be foolish to dismiss such things lightly. In the mythic imagination, I think Mary intuitively symbolizes the first incarnation, or Mother Earth, if you will allow me. I'm not saying Mary is the first incarnation, only that she became the natural archetype and symbol for it, particularly in art, which is perhaps why the Madonna is still the most painted subject in Western art. I believe that Mary is the major feminine archetype for the Christ mystery. This archetype had already shown herself as Sophia, or Holy Wisdom. See Proverbs chapter 8, verse 1, Wisdom chapter 7, verse 7, and again in the book of Revelation chapter 1, 12, verses 1 through 17, in the cosmic symbol of a woman clothed with the sun and standing on the moon. Neither Sophia nor the woman of Revelation is precisely Mary of Nazareth. Yet in so many ways, both are. and each broadens our understanding of the divine feminine. Jung believed that humans produce in art the inner images the soul needs in order to see itself and to allow its own transformation. Jung believed that humans produce in art the inner images the soul needs in order to see itself and to allow its own transformation. Just try to count how many paintings in world art museums, churches, and homes show a wonderfully dressed woman offering for your admiration and hers a usually naked baby boy. What is the very ubiquity of this image saying on the soul level? I think it looks something like this. The first incarnation, creation, is symbolized by Sophia, incarnate, a beautiful, feminine, multicolored, graceful Mary. She is invariably offering us Jesus, God incarnated into vulnerability and nakedness. Mary became the symbol of the first universal incarnation. She then hands the second incarnation on to us, while remaining in the background. The focus is always on the child. Earth Mother presenting spiritual Son, the two first stages of the incarnation. Feminine receptivity handing on the fruit of her yes, and inviting us to offer our own yes. There is a wholeness about this that many find very satisfying to the soul. I hope you will not write off this line of thinking as trendy feminism, or simply an attempt to address the concerns of those who have left Christianity because of the sins of patriarchy, or the Church's failure to recognize and honor a feminine understanding of God. We always had the feminine incarnation. In fact, it was the first incarnation, and even better, it moved toward including all of us. Mary is all of us, both receiving and handing on the gift. We liked her precisely because she was one of us and not God. I think Christians of the first 1,000 years understood this on an intuitive and allegorical level. But by the time of the much-needed Protestant Reformation, all we could see was, but she is not God, which is entirely true. But we could no longer see in wholes and see that, even better, she is us. That is why we loved her, probably without fully understanding why. Much of the human race can more easily imagine unconditional love coming from the feminine and the maternal rather than from a man. I have to say this. In the many images of Mary, humans see our own feminine soul. We needed to see ourselves in her and say with her, God has looked upon me in my lowliness. From now on, all generations will call me blessed. Luke chapter 1, verse 48. I do realize the dangers here, and I acknowledge that for all practical purposes, many Catholics divinized Mary, probably out of sentimentality. All the time, I invite you to consider the deeper and more subtle message. I have often said that many Catholics have a poor theology of Mary, but an excellent psychology. Humans like, need, and trust our mothers to give us gifts, to nurture us, and always to forgive us, which is what we want from God. My years of work with men's groups have convinced me of it. In fact, the more macho and patriarchal a culture, the greater its devotion to Mary. I once counted 11 images of Mary in a single Catholic church in Texas, cowboy country. I see that as a culture trying unconsciously and often not very successfully to balance itself out. In the same way, Mary gives women in the Catholic Church a dominant feminine image to counterbalance all the males parading around up front. Humanity has always been receiving the Christ in every culture and age, and women are most naturally imaged as the receivers of the divine gift. Think Windledorf, Ephesus, Constantinople, Ravenna, Mount Carmel, Black Madonnas, Valencia, Walsingham, Guadalupe, until every country of the world eventually had its own feminine image of one who has received the Christ in her very body, not in her head. And also note the rather universal pronoun our. Always our lady, never my lady. This is a sure giveaway that we are dealing with a corporate personality, one who stands for the whole, and a collective understanding of salvation. Same with our Lord, or our Father. I never hear official liturgical prayers speak of my Jesus, or my Lord. God and Mary are always addressed as a shared experience, at least in the historic churches, and before our latter individualization of the whole gospel message. I find it interesting that male gods tend to come from the heavens and are usually associated with the sun, sky, power, and light. But in most mythology and fairy tales, feminine gods tend to come out of the earth or the sea and are often associated with fertility, subtlety, good darkness, and nurturance. Invariably, it's brother sun and sister moon, except in German. If creation is indeed the first incarnation and the first Bible, Romans chapter 1, verse 20, if mother precedes child, then it is not all surprising that the physical, earthly, and embodied symbols would be recognized in mind, art, and tradition as Mother Earth, never Father. From this intuition, the first 1400 years of Christianity, East and West, made an easy transference to Mary, who was invariably clothed in flowing beauty and color, often crowned by Jesus, and was no longer the simple, poor maiden of Nazareth. Another important non-biblical emergence was the widespread belief that Mary's body was taken up into heaven after her death. This is the only example I know of the Vatican actually taking a survey before it proclaimed the doctrine in 1950. They found that most of the Catholic world already believed this to be true without it ever having been taught formally, which is called the sensus fidelium. Accounts of Mary's assumptions aren't found anywhere in the Bible, unless you want to read Revelation chapter 12 in that archetypal way. But they circulated among Christians as early as the 4th century. And by the time the Vatican formalized the doctrine, Carl Jung considered the confirmation of the most significant theological development of the 20th century because it proclaimed that a woman's body permanently exists in the eternal realms. Wow. The pantheon of male god images was forever feminized, and even more, it was declared that human bodies, not just souls or spirits, could share in this process of divinization. This is hugely important. The Mary symbol brought together the two disparate worlds of matter and spirit, feminine mother and masculine child, earth and heaven, whether we like it or not. The unconscious got it. I think. Consciously, many fought it, to their own loss, in my opinion. Now much of the world sees Christianity as hopelessly patriarchal. Saying yes to God. The point is that, in some ways, many humans can identify with Mary more than they can with Jesus, precisely because she was not God, but the archetype for our yes to God. Not one heroic action is attributed to her, only trust itself, pure being and not doing. From her first yes to the angel Gabriel, Luke chapter 1, verse 38, to the birth itself, chapter 2, verse 7, to her last yes at the foot of the cross, John chapter 19, verse 25, and her full presence at a fiery, windy Pentecost, see Acts chapter 1, verse 14, where she is the only woman named at the first outpouring of the Spirit. Mary appears on cue at the key moments of the gospel narratives. She is every woman and every man, and that is why I call her the feminine symbol for the universal incarnation. Mary is the great yes that humanity forever needs for Christ to be born into the world. Even Paul McCartney immortalized this idea in his song, Let It Be, although on the first level he was talking about his own mother, Mary. Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom. Let it be. That's why people in the first 1,000 years loved her so much. In Mary, we see that God was never to be forced on us, and God never comes uninvited. If Christ and Jesus are the archetypes of what God is doing, Mary is the archetype of how to receive what God is doing and hand it on to others. In art, she is invariably offering Jesus to the observer or inviting us to come to him. To Jesus through Mary, we Catholics used to say in the 1950s. Again, very poor theology, but very effective psychology and pedagogy for many. In Mary, humanity has said our eternal yes to God. A yes that cannot be undone. A corporate yes that overrides our many no's. This is why Mary was commonly called the new Eve, who undid the corporate no of the first Eve, and is invariably pictured in art stepping on the snake that tempted Eve, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Today, on many levels, we are witnessing an immense longing for the mature feminine at every level of our society, from our politics to our economics, in our psyche, our cultures, our patterns of leadership, and our theologies, all of which have become far too warlike, competitive, mechanistic, and non-contemplative. We are terribly imbalanced. Far too often, the feminine has had to work in secret, behind the scenes, indirectly, yet it can still have a profound effect. We see Mary's subtlety of grace, patience, and humility when she quietly says at the wedding feast of Cana, "They have no wine," John chapter 2, verse 3, and then seems totally assured that Jesus will take it from there, John chapter 2, verse 5. And he does. Like the Christ mystery itself, the deep feminine often works underground and in the shadows, and from that position creates a much more intoxicating message. While church and culture have often denied the divine feminine roles, offices, and formal authority, the feminine has continued to exercise incredible power at the cosmic and personal levels. Most of us in the American Catholic Church feel that the culture of faith was passed on to us much more from the nuns than from the priests. Feminine power is deeply relational and symbolic, and thus transformative, in ways that men cannot control or even understand. I suspect that is why we fear it so much.